James experienced the gang stalking. I believe he said for about 3 years, and it was as if his entire town turned on him. I mean, the people at the grocery store, just these people that were once cordial to him, all of a sudden decided to start treating him like garbage out of nowhere. And it's almost like these people don't even know what they're doing, right? So this went on for years, right? Almost to the point where James said he was getting ready to break down. He couldn't take it anymore. And then right at that moment, one of the voices broke in and said, "Tomorrow you won't ever have to worry about this ever again." And he said, "Kevin, the next day, completely different. It was as if nobody even remembered that they treated me like shit for years prior to that. Everybody was nice. My wife and I went out food shopping. The way, like,
The Bodega is a guide and a storyteller, escorting you through the night, lighting the way, warding off thieves, ghosts, demons, and other oddities. Along the journey, his companions would often share with him the most curious of stories that he'd record in his codex. Perhaps you just might find yourself traveling with the Bodega and sharing one of yours.
Hey everyone, it's Rye here. Just a heads up about this interview. Um, Strangely, we hit some major technical difficulties recording it. I was able to piece it all together. We'll get it to work. But if you listen, you guys going to hear some issues where the power went out in the whole block as we're having this conversation. I tried setting this interview up again by sending him another invite after I used my mobile as a hotspot to conduct the interview further, and then my computer just like completely shut down. It was still on its battery, but it just shut right off. Then not only that, then we had another technical difficulty again. Um, it's hard to tell when you're watching or when you're listening, but I'll give you a head. You'll hear me mention it. That's like, oh, well, we had some issues. All right, so let's get to it. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Codega's Codex of Curiosities. I'm Rye, the Codega, and tonight we're going to dive back into, to targeted individuals, and I want to explore it a little bit more. We've heard some stories, we've heard some experiences, but what truly is a targeted individual, and what does it mean to be a targeted individual? Is it like a government surveillance? Is there mind control, electromagnetic warfare, or something even stranger, something darker? And I've heard many stories. So there's many different experiences. So I'm going to bring back Kevin Orr. He's coming back to the Codex to take us deeper into the reality of targeted individuals. And so I'm not going to hold back. We're not going to hold back. I'm going to be asking questions that perhaps everybody is wanting to hear. We want to find out who or what is behind this, and why are certain people chosen, and is there any way out? Is there any reprieve from this? So whether you are a skeptic or a survivor, or you're just starting to connect those dots, this conversation will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about personal freedom, privacy, and psychological warfare. And with that, I am going to jump into saying welcome and thank you, everyone, for supporting the show. As usual, this is what I do. I'm really looking for some strong support. So I really would like if you guys just share the show in any way that you can, whether you're sharing it with your friends or you just hit that share button on Facebook, Reddit, or Instagram, anything like that. It really helps to promote the show and get these messages out there, because maybe there's someone out there, maybe a family member or a friend who needs to hear this. So with that, let's get ready, because what Kevin is about to reveal just might change how you or I or maybe your friend or family see the world and who is really watching. All right, let's bring Kevin to the stage. Kevin, welcome back to Codega's Codex of Curiosities.
all right, thanks for having me back on. I appreciate it.
Yes, I do too. This was our first interview. When you reached out to me, it was something I was like, okay, this sounds intriguing. And then we had our interview, and it was very interesting. It was something I hadn't heard before, and it appears that out in the out in the world, everybody else wanted to appear. It is my number one video that we've had, my number one interview that we had. It just blew up. Everybody seemed to be searching for it. And I thought it would be good to bring you back so we can go a little deeper into what this is in an entirety. Because in the first time you shared your experiences, and you kind of dived into a little bit of these targeted individual and what it is to be a targeted individual. But I want to go deeper into that because, just like a lot of other people, I have a lot of questions still. I I'm wondering what this truly is, what you believe it is, and I know you do have some different beliefs than other people because seeing reading in the comments, there's other people. It's like, no, it's this, it's this, it's this, and I personally believe that a lot of times it's kind of like a collection of it all. It's not to say that you're wrong or you're wrong. It's kind of like, well, maybe you're experiencing these symptoms or these attacks or these stalkings, and I'm not. And it all seems correct in that sense. Is that possibly true? Or
It is, and that's actually a really good place for us to start, is understanding that, people that are actually experiencing this will always try to explain it with what they know best, right? So the person that was raised Christian is going to go the angels and demons route. The person that was raised Muslim is going to say it's jinn. A person that is possibly atheist is going to go the scientific route and say it's all technology. People that are more spiritual, that find themselves in this, they're going to say that it's their spirit guides working them through past trauma and karma. And I'm sure that some people say witchcraft, or some people, and I'm sure that you saw all of these explanations within the commentary. There's like what 1.7 thousand comments on that video, and it's everywhere. I mean, it's literally it's all over the place, right?
it it truly is. So let's take it back right to the initial definition of what exactly is a targeted individual.
Okay, so I would split the targeted individual experience up into two two phases, two primary phases, I guess: gang stalking and then targeted individual. And in a lot of cases, gang stalking is almost like the HIV to AIDS. It's like the precursor to the full-blown targeted individual experience, where it starts off with people are experiencing like workplace harassment. The entire world seems to kind of turn against them, overnight. Street theater, those kinds of things. And it's very important. So we'll tackle the gang stalking aspect
Yes,
of this
please.
first, because it's very important to differentiate between somebody that is experiencing just plain old harassment, you know, or and somebody that's experiencing something more along a like an anomalous sort of gang stalking experience, where synchronicities are lining up and they're seeing five of the same car going around the block, or everybody that they see in that day is wearing yellow shirts. It's just, it gets very bizarre like that. So, and here's a very good example. In my community this morning, somebody posted a video, I'm sorry, pictures of, I guess it was like search warrant, sheriff's department, uh, trying to serve a warrant for their boyfriend, and that she had gotten into a fight with her boyfriend, and that they had a PFA against them, and she had documents. That's not gang stalking. You have some family issues that you need to work out with the court system, you know? So, but there's a lot of miscommunication with that. I had a boss one time, who was, he was a member of a motorcycle gang, and the police used to drive by his house and shine their spotlight in his window. That's not gang stalking. They just didn't like him because he was in a motorcycle gang, and yeah, they just that's that's just harassment. There's a big difference between that, which is what a lot of people experience, and they find themselves within a gang stalking community, and the type of gang stalking that becomes something more of a phenomena,
Okay,
where
so sorry to interrupt you, Kevin. So
no,
it's
go
kind
ahead.
of like
Yeah,
the lifestyle that you're living. If you're involved with something illegal and the police are onto you and they are following you and stalking you, that isn't gang stalking. That
that's not
is
gang stalking.
it's cause and effect.
That's
It's
you
just
breaking the law, and you should stop breaking the law. That's
a,
what that
a,
is.
exactly, yes, and I would love to get that out of the way. Yeah, so these events aren't like, some people do confuse them thinking that this is it, but you're like, no, no, that is not it. That is, like you said, you're breaking the law. It's cause and effect. You've done something, and they know you've done something, and they are onto you. They're tracking you for that very reason.
And you're being
Yes.
paranoid, and your fear is through the roof, and you're just, so that's something that's very important to get out of the way. And people have family issues, and they're, next thing you know, they find themselves in court and they say, my brother is coming up against me, or my sister is following me. And then they get very paranoid, and now they think that there's cameras in their home, and that their family is setting up ways to destroy them and defame them. And that's not, from what I have experienced in my life, and what from other people's testimonies are, that is not the gang stalking that go turns into a targeted individual experience. So so now that we got that out of the way, there are two different types of, within the community, the targeted individual community. There's two types of gang stalking. And there is the kind of gang stalking that occurs where people hear the voices. Okay. And then there is the gang stalking that occurs where people don't hear voices, but yet they're being influenced by the voices. Okay. They're unaware of this dialogue that's happening in their back of their mind. And it's as if their life and the lives of people around them are being orchestrated against them, to get them to kind of push them into some sort of a traumatic scenario, or a humiliating scenario where they make a complete ass out of themselves, or they wind up getting arrested or thrown into prison or a psych ward, or they wind up committing murder, unfortunately, or suicide. This happens. So, and I would say that, before we really get into that, it's very important to understand some of the causes that lead into this. Okay. And now I can't say that there's any one direct cause, and I can't say that causation is or correlation is causation, meaning, I can't look at everything and say that there is one direct cause for this. However however, there is a huge amount of targeted individuals that have had a problem with methamphetamine. Okay. Now that's, I'm saying that that's a big handful. You can kind of see that as an underlying, theme with a lot of people, that they've had problems with stimulants, and especially methamphetamine. And um, now, a lot of people in my community have never touched drugs in their entire life. It started happening to them in deeper states of meditation, uh, during a traumatic time in their life. One woman, while she was going through a divorce, she began hearing the voices and being targeted. Another guy in my community, he was into DMT, and he went on a DMT binge. And next thing you know, some entity came out of a portal and physically attacked him and left him with permanent back injury. And then his experience turned into voices, full blown targeted individual experience with the voices and everything going at him. He went nuts. Um,
So do you
yeah,
think that there's a possibility that um, perhaps we have made a connection, whether it be like through methamphetamines, has elevated the consciousness or made a direct conscious link, with, like, we have DMT, you said you have meditation, or these heightened emotions that have connected us onto another level, that have now allowed access to ourselves. It's kind of like we've elevated, I don't want to say elevated, but we've connected to another realm, and now they have access to us. Is that a possibility? Do you?
very good. Yeah, that is my theory. So I can't, a lot of this stuff, there's no empirical evidence, except for community testimony, to say that there's a very high probability that this is what is causing this. Okay. So, I mean, we'll go into the technology stuff in a little bit, but from my point of view and from my experience, what you said was on point. That, and especially if you look at a drug like methamphetamine, what it does, right? It keeps an individual awake for days at a time, a lot of times. And when you do sleep, it's not very good sleep. You just kind of get this very subsurface sleep. You might dip in the REM, but then you're coming right back out. You're in a very high entropy state of mind, which is a very elusive thing about methamphetamine. When you first do it, it is wonderful. I mean, don't ever do it, because it's fantastic, right? and because you're thinking on a higher plane. You're like, I remember the first time I did it, for like the first 6 7 months, it was the best thing I had ever discovered. I could work harder, work more. I would be talking on the phone and swinging a hammer at the same time, and yelling at guys to bring more stuff up the ladder. And um but then eventually that's not a sustainable source of energy, and you develop this very high entropy system that becomes very disorganized, dysfunctional, disconnected from family and bonds, and communication and relationships. It makes it very difficult to look somebody else in their eye. And then that was when I began hearing voices. So, um, and it started off with me just kind of hearing it in the background, as if somebody was speaking about me, not to me, but about me, but in the next room. And it was very, I would internalize it. And it was always very negative. What an asshole. Look at what he's doing with his life. I can't believe he's doing that. And then you think it's your coworkers. So you go, and I would confront my coworkers, I would confront my employer, I would confront, I'm making a complete ass out of myself thinking that they're talking about me. So what you come to find out is that in psychology, they have what is known as and this is also a theory that I think it's more than a theory. It's called the default mode network, the DMN. And this is the part of the brain that narrates our life. Right. So we constantly are in a state of, first of all, it's very important to understand that us humans think predominantly negatively all the time. And this has been proven. 80% of our thoughts throughout the day are negative. And this is a product of evolution because you know, we're in a state of dying. We're very fragile. We can die at any moment. So we're always thinking about ways to not injure ourselves. I have a daughter at home who's 17 months old, and my day is loaded with thinking one step ahead of her about how she's not going to smack her head on something, fall down the stairs, fall off the bed, roll. I'm always thinking in a very fearful, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen next, so that I'm
So
engaged in
these so,
preparation
so
for it.
this negativity that we're being to ourselves is almost like a survival mechanism
Exactly
to
what it is. It's the survival
yes.
mechanism. Okay. So, and this goes on all the time in our heads. We're constantly in a state of projecting probabilities. We have probabilities going on in our head all the time. And if you look in the work by Dr. Leslie Ellis, she's a dream clinician who has proven that we dream all the time. Not like we're in a dream, but right now at this very moment, even while you and I are communicating, we are recreating a whole nother scenario in our heads to help us cope with what is currently happening right now. So even while we're talking, I'm also in my subconscious creating a dream world that's helping me to prepare ahead of time for what word I'm going to say next. See what I'm saying? So we're always in a state of creating. Or we're always creating in our imagination, in our dream state, and you're involved in there. And you know, so that turns against you, because now while you're doing the meth, you haven't slept, you haven't gone down to those deeper states of sleep to kind of defrag a little bit, and your dopamine and serotonin are depleted, leaving only adrenaline and cortisol, which creates fear. So it's not that fear is elevated per se initially, but that's all that exists. And then in that state, that will elevate quickly. So it's as if we're bringing up this whole other reality to come and meet us, right? So it's like the hell that we're creating in our mind begins to intertwine with our conscious reality, right? So what you have is a commingling of the unconscious and the conscious arena kind of coming together and intertwining with one another. There's like a confluence of consciousnesses that are coming together, and that's what happens with these elevated states of paranoia and fear.
So
Now,
in essence, we could
yeah, go
be
ahead,
actually
go ahead.
we could be manifesting this ourselves. Is what's happening is, we talk about manifestation for all these positive things.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm going to manifest a new boyfriend, girlfriend. I'm going to manifest a new job. I'm going to manifest a trip here, or
yes.
win the lottery. But in fact, this is the negative side. The flip side of it all is kind of what's
Exactly.
happening.
Negative manifestation, and what another guy in my group refers to as negative synchronicity, meaning that the world in itself and humans, we're kind of in a state of autocorrect. And when we don't correct within our unconscious arena, it will become present in our environment, so that you have to face it. Now, whether that you wind up connecting with family members friends, police, whoever it is that you're going to bring into your world that are going to start tormenting you and gang stalking you, that, that's what you start bringing into your world. Now, this happens a lot of times with people that don't hear the voices, right? It'll just happen. And we're getting ready to release a video on the Power Awareness podcast with a guy, Jimmy, who broke it down beautifully. And he too, before now doing podcasts with us, was doing podcasts about government conspiracy because he had no other way to explain it. But now that he's gone through it, he sees it a whole, it's like a whole different ballgame. So for him, he's never heard voices. And when you don't hear the voices, they will kind of orchestrate this unconscious environment that then begins to manifest outwardly into your conscious world. And next thing you know, boom, the nightmare is real. The nightmare is now coming at you. And you don't, and you're trying to run from it and hide from it. And everywhere you go, it doesn't matter where you go. I drove from Philadelphia to Las Vegas, back to Philadelphia to San Francisco, all the way back to Philadelphia, drove, try and get rid of this thing, and it's with me every single step of the way. It's there. It's an entanglement of consciousness. Like, this isn't
Like
some.
yeah, it's a quantum entanglement. It's not a physical entanglement.
I've been in caves, I've been in airplanes going, to Florida, and it's just there. It's just something that's there all the time. Okay, so kind of we'll move out of that arena. So, okay, well, actually, real quick before we go past that. So the more that somebody responds to this, and the crazier that you're acting, well, now people are really responding to you in real life as if you're nutso. So now your paranoia that you think everybody is after you and you're responding to everybody as if they are after you. Well, now
It's
people
being
don't want anything to
reciprocated.
do with it. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
Okay,
and all right. So,
before we
yeah,
go too far, can you give some examples of or actually, before we do that, you've been talking about your community and your YouTube. Please let people know where they can find you. I know we didn't do that in the beginning, so where is your
that's okay.
community so that people can locate that?
Sure. So the number one community is on Reddit, and that's called Positive TI. If you just go on Reddit and put on Positive TI, you'll see a community of over 1,000 members there and growing. We take a very psycho-spiritual approach to this thing because, experientially speaking, those that recover and maintain their recovery do so through a process of spiritual enlightenment. And those that wind up chasing a technological answer, they're still going at it. So we have like a 12-step program there that was put together based off of testimony from people that have gone through it, right? And we have a sponsorship program there. If you're kind of new to this and you're not understanding and everything's very confusing and you're just starting to hear that high pitch ringing and hearing the voices, or you think that this is something that's, you're feeling the energy, the energetic attacks, that kind of electromagnetic feeling to your body, or the zaps. These are signs that you could be getting ready to be, kind of go through a targeted individual experience. So there's plenty of people there that are more than willing to help you out and extend their time and a helping hand. And yeah, I say, and then our next community is our Discord community, which we have ongoing chat going 24/7, again, with guys that have also recovered. I'm in there a lot. And then we have the YouTube channel, the Power Awareness YouTube channel, which is kind of up and building. And I have my own personal YouTube channel. If you go on YouTube and just put in Kevin Orr, targeted individual, you'll see I have collected interviews with other targeted individuals, and I do some kind of, like, I do blogging on there as well. And you can go in there and watch these hour-long interviews that I have with other targeted individuals from all over the world, and their sequence of events and their process that they went through, and the alignment, between us all. Yeah. So thank you. Thanks for letting me promote that.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, can you just give me any examples of actual gang stalking, like some events that have happened that you're like, this is gang stalking, this is what it is, this is what this is. We don't have to go into a definition, but just of examples of it now.
Sure. And this will kind of lead into the other part of it. So there's gang stalking with voices as well. And I'll use the one guy in my group. His name is James. I actually asked his permission if I could use his story for this because it's point on. So James has been going through this. I want to say I met James 2 years ago. So everybody's testimony that I'm going to give you are people that I have a very deep relationship with, that have been active in my community for years. and have gone through it. So James experienced the gang stalking. I want to say, I believe he said for about 3 years, and it was as if his entire town turned on him. I mean, the people at the grocery store, just these people that were once cordial to him, all of a sudden decided to start treating him like garbage out of nowhere. And it's almost like these people don't even know what they're doing. Right. So this went on for years, right? Almost to the point where James said he was getting ready to break down. He couldn't take it anymore. And then right at that moment, one of the voices broke in and said, "Tomorrow you won't ever have to worry about this ever again." And he said, "Kevin, the next day, completely different. It was as if nobody even remembered that they treated me like shit for years prior to that. Everybody was nice. My wife and I went out food shopping. The way, like, a whole change. It's phenomenal. And this is kind of, and this is common. This is a very common thing.
So,
Most,
it's
yeah,
not like it's an so what you're telling me is like some of these people, it's not like they're organized, like I'm
no,
receiving a text and I need to do this. It's just like this subconscious thing that is just like a click,
yep, yep,
and they are being acting differently
yes,
to you. It's almost like you have rubbed them the wrong way.
exactly. But you haven't. It's like the person really has done nothing towards these strangers to bring this sort of treatment towards them. Okay. So another big thing is you get a lot of recordings of people with motorcycles. Motorcycles will just pull up in front of your house and start revving the engine. That's a big one. Street theater, where it's like everybody that's on the street is talking about you, and you actually will hear people talking about your personal inventory, like your thoughts that you have going on, or like something personal within your private life. All of a sudden, they're talking about it. Now, that could be one of two things. That could either be that person that is speaking about you is actually speaking about you and is being manipulated within their own head and doesn't even realize what they're saying, or the voices that you have in your head are intertwining with what you're hearing from them. Because listen, throughout this whole thing, there's something very important that you have to keep in mind. Even though right now, as we're doing this, I'm looking at you on my screen and you're looking at me on your screen, it's taking place up here, all of it, right? Everything that I see, everything that I feel, everything that I smell, everything that I taste, everything that I hear, it all gets processed up here. So, and this kind of goes into a lot of Buddhist philosophy, so basically, the Buddhist belief that, like, yes, there is like an observable reality, but all of reality takes place up here. And if this isn't right up here, or there's a leaching from from the collective unconscious, as Carl Jung referred to it as, into your personal unconscious, and that begins to intertwine, it's very difficult to tell the difference between what's real and what's not real. And it'll kind of sync up with what you're hearing from people, and the voices that I heard, they could mimic anything. I mean, they mimicked ex-girlfriends, coworkers, employers, my parents, my girlfriend's mother and father, like they mimicked everything.
Wow,
So
so that
that
is
can link
so
up.
difficult. Sorry,
Yeah. So
that
what
is
you're
so
hearing,
difficult. Oh, go
yeah,
ahead, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. So what you're hearing, how it's being processed in here can be intertwined with something else, within your unconscious arena, and you're just processing it differently, and you have no choice but to think it's actually part of your observable reality. And that's the best way I can put that.
Perfect. That's what I was going to kind of ask. Like trying to differentiate between the two. Like is that actually someone talking to me, or is it these voices that are manipulating my perception of what is happening in this? Like that is a mind fuck. It just
Yeah.
totally messes with your mind.
Yeah. Oh
Or
yeah.
put
Yeah.
it like that. Yeah.
Perception manipulation to the max. Yeah, it really
Yes.
is. You really have to buckle down and get rigid with yourself and start practicing some serious mindfulness techniques, and begin like a serious spiritual walk, depending on what resonates with you, because it's not a matter of you must be Christian or you must be Muslim or you must be. It's about what's going to resonate with you, whatever you have the most conviction towards. That's that's going to be real. Whatever is going to have the most authenticity with you, that's where your power is. That's where your power. So and that's something that's actually one of my steps. Is like that's something that I actually push on people, is to dive deep into what resonates with you the most. because that's where your control is going to be, and roll with that.
Wow. Okay. That's it's great that you have these steps. It's kind of like almost like an AA meeting or an NA meeting kind of thing where you have the
It is,
12
but
steps.
yeah, yeah. Maybe at the end, if we have a little time at the end, I can just run through the 12 steps real quick. We can just give a very brief description of each of them, just so you can kind of see because the 12 steps are very indicative of the process that a person needs to go through to come out of this on the other end stronger than they were before it started. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Yeah. If we definitely have time, I would definitely
Okay.
like to do that. Now, um do we want to go into possibly like technology, like that kind of side of it, where some people believe that it is like a V2K, which is voice to skull technology, or can we touch on that?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I'll be completely honest up front. This is going to be the part of this that people are going to disagree with me the most on. And I'll say this is that I initially went down that path, thinking that this was technology. And truthfully, I cannot deny the fact that this sort of technology does not exist. I have no way of knowing, right? And at the same time, I have no way of knowing 100% if that's what's actually being used. So that's me being 100% honest. I just don't know. I don't know, right? So, and that's actually the first step is being able to say to yourself, I don't know, right? Because when you
That's something that is so difficult.
I know it's very difficult for people to say I don't know, especially with this, because we're dealing with a matter of the mind, and the mind demands order. That's the brain's job. The brain's job is to make sense of things. And when it doesn't make sense of things, a lot of times it'll just make something up to pacify itself, right? And this will lead to a condition known as apophenia, where a person is putting pieces of a puzzle together that don't exist just because it alleviates the tension in the mind. So I'll say this, and this is a big problem that I've run into within the targeted individual community, is that people post a lot of stuff secondhand, meaning they post it with the belief that this is true, but they don't actually know that it is true. And that's a very dangerous thing. And I think I shared this with you in private messaging, is that there's a quote by Kant that he said that truth is the agreement of cognition with its object. Meaning, if I have a thought in my head that that something is happening could possibly be real, and then I see that outside of myself, well, now the object has met my cognition and truth has been made. But with these things that people are using, such as patents, patents are not proof of existence. If you look up the actual definition of a patent is proof of a concept. It's the proof of an idea. Okay. So a lot of times that's all it takes. Somebody has the idea planted in their head that what they're experiencing is V2K. They see a patent, and now, cognition has met its object and truth is created. When really all that's happened is an idea met an idea, and you're perceiving it as truth, and it's a false confirmation bias. That happens a lot. Okay. So kind of get that out of the way. You really have to see through that deception. And I wouldn't be surprised to if it would ever came to light to find out that the government was not aware of the collective unconscious of man, and that what people are actually picking up on is not technology, and pumps out these patents to claim authority over something that it has no business claiming authority over, as if to say this is our doing. And because what that does is it creates fear, right? Now your God is no higher than the government. You're giving your autonomy and you're giving your mind and your mental faculties over to the government. And the people that do best with this, they go higher. They see beyond that. They see above that and they give it over to God. And then they wind up recovering. And then they wind up leading this very spiritual path because that was their source of recovery. So that is this, that, for me, when I look at that, that's a big false flag for me to have to see through that. And, it's a very deceptive phase of this that people kind of have to get through, is the fact that, and a lot of people are still under the delusion that their neighbors somehow have access to this technology. The thinking that your neighbor has access to some sort of like a V2K thing where they can transmit thoughts into your head is absolutely absurd. And I saw the one comment on your, on the last podcast where we did. where the one guy said, you know, this thing can be created for less than $200 a month. You guys are a bunch of drug addicts, schizos, and you're a bunch of sheeple. And, you know, like the ego on this guy was just massive. And, you know, that is just not, if it was, if we could transmit the thoughts into somebody else's head for under $200, everybody would be doing it. Everybody would be doing it. It
That's a
would be a
cheap investment.
weapon.
Yeah,
It a cheap investment to have total control over everything. Think about what you could do. You could, to your boss, give Kevin a raise. Give Kevin a $20 an hour raise. You could use it on your children, right? You're going to sit down and eat dinner and not throw it on the floor. You know, it would be abused beyond belief.
and at that point, then everybody would know about it. It would
Everybody would know
be
about
commonplace, and it's just like
it. Yes.
now,
Yeah.
Kevin's gotten into my head again. He wants $20 raise. No
Yeah.
way, kind of now.
Right. It would be a complete absolute societal breakdown of trust would be. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. So the other thing to understand too is that the government, especially the United States government, has control over the patent office. They control it. They have the ability to put out what they want to put out, not put out what they don't want to put out. And during the making of the atomic bomb, right, they chose to withhold all the patents for atomic weaponry because they wanted to keep it secret. They were dealing with a weapon of mass destruction. So why do it now? You know what I mean? Like why with this, which is by categorically speaking, a weapon of mass destruction. This 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 is something that could completely bring the world down to its knees. Why patent it? Why let it be known that you have this technology? And not only that, but
That's a
why?
great sorry. That's a
Right.
great point. It's kind of like it's almost a misdirection, perhaps. Like
Yes.
I
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I do, and I'm going to be honest with you. I do
Yeah.
believe that there is a V2K. I do, but
Okay.
to the point that it's going to be everybody is going to be targeting like this guy said. I think that's ridiculous. I think that is absolute ridiculous. I do believe it is. They found a way to do it, but I think it is like copying something else that they couldn't explain. It was something is like we have something that is spiritual or psychokinesis or along that line, and they were able to slightly copy it. Now, but I do like your point though of like why put it out in the patents and then and my comment of being it could be a misdirection, kind of undermines my belief a little bit, but it's interesting. It's the circular kind of argument of like, well, I do believe that there is something out there like that.
Yeah.
That there
Right. And
is some
like
sort
I
of
said, yeah,
technology,
like
but
I said in the beginning, I wouldn't be surprised if there was. Do I believe that that's what I am experiencing? No. I
no.
do not believe that that's what and the people that have gone through this for a long time, they don't believe that either. So and there's a couple reasons why. And I think that's important to kind of lay out right now. And the I would say for me, the number one reason why I don't believe that to be true is because if throughout my entire experience and throughout most everybody's experience, its agenda, whatever this thing is, its agenda is always preceded by its limitations. Meaning it waxes and it wanes. It goes up and it goes down, right? It's like the tide. It'll kind of come in and do its thing and then it'll go back out. It never just waxes. It's never just like going on, hit the kill switch and leave it on. It doesn't do that, right? It teaches you a lesson during the waxing period. You learn that lesson and then there's relief. And then it kind of comes back, right? And then it goes away and then it comes back and then it dies down, right? So it's through everybody's experience, mine included, that has gone through this. There is a gradual build and then a very slow let go and release at the end. It's like a very catch and release, like almost like a conscious catch and release sort of thing, where you're brought in, you're learned to rebuttal appropriately against it, hold on to what you've learned during that rebuttal period, relax, and then you're brought back in to see if that rebuttal still works. And then eventually, what happens over time is that you begin to almost personify the manner in which you've been rebuttaling this thing. If this thing wanted to harm us, if it wanted to destroy us or kill us, if its main goal was to incapacitate us, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now because I wouldn't be able to speak as I am to you about this whole thing because it has the ability to completely just I've experienced it. It'll just shut you off. It'll just completely drop you to your knees to the point where you can't speak, you can't talk, you can't think coherently. You're blinded by a bright flash of white light and just hit with an electricity, and you're immobilized. A street, and if it meant me harm, if it wanted me to not be a better person or to help other people, I would have just left that on. It would have just left that on. I'd be still be in a psych ward, or I would have killed myself. It doesn't do that. That's not what we see. So again, that's an important thing to really remember, is that its agenda is always preceded by its limits. Okay. And now, again, we talked about this before, and I talked about my own paranormal experiences with this thing. And the number one, there's I would say three main things within mine that really brought me out of this being a human intervention. And the one was the visitation with the light orbs. I don't know what they are, but they just come. They just, dead people, spirits, NHI, UFO. I don't know. It's not, does the government have the ability to do that? Maybe, this is a very difficult time to be engaged with phenomena. I'll say that. This is a very confusing time, because had all this stuff happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I would have been thoroughly convinced from the beginning that this was some sort of NHI orchestrated thing, or some sort of demon and angels thing. And these days, it's like, oh, maybe we can be doing this to each other. I don't know. So there is a lot of confusion here. Okay. And the second thing is stuff being moved in my apartment. Just random stuff slammed, moved. Just, I don't know how a human being does that without me knowing. And now the outer body experiences, the astral projection. And once you start to experience something like astral projection, I don't know, have you ever done an episode on this, or do you know anything about
I
astral
I
projection?
I
Or
have talked to some people about astral projection. We haven't. It's never been like a full topic of an episode. I've experienced astral projection myself. Like it wasn't on purpose. It was unconsciously. I projected on my body, and I was quite young. I was about 9 years old at that time. Uh, hey everyone, Rye back here again. So we just had some crazy technical difficulty where everything, my whole power in the whole area, the whole neighborhood just cut out. Um, so now I'm running it via my cell phone and my battery. So we'll see how long this goes for. What's strange is when I went to send Kevin a new link for this new location, like the new showroom, the studio, my computer just shut down completely as well. So I don't know. Is this
oh, that happens.
individuals? It could be like this is just absolutely bizarre. So that's why my studio, all my lights are off right now because I need to conserve as much energy as possible. So Kevin, we were talking about astral projection, and you had said, do you know what that is? And I said I haven't done any shows on it. I've touched on it. I've had a personal experience when I was about 9 years old. Not really trying to do it; it just happened. But let's go from there.
Yeah. Okay, so it has happened to me, and it never happened in my life prior to um, you know, the targeted individual experience. And you kind of begin to realize that, first of all, and I have read testimony where some people's body does not go into a state of vibration, but most people, your whole body goes into a state of vibration. And that's what happens with me. So my entire body, from my feet to my head, will go into this full blown resonance. And then you're pretty much just extracted out of yourself. Poof. This energy version of you comes out, and it feels as if you're the very top part of a roller coaster as you're getting. It's very exciting, like it's a euphoric rush. It comes out, and next thing you know, you're in some other dimension. And I personally, I'm still very new to outer body experiences, and beginning a practice of doing it. And I have not met any other entities on the astral plane. Now, I'm involved with the astral projection community on Reddit and their Discord, and you hear their stories from experienced astral projectors that have been doing this for 10, 15 years and have done it hundreds of times. They meet deceased loved ones, The one guy was talking about he communicated with his mother. Other entities, grays, aliens, elf looking things, dwarves, shaman type figures. So there's like this whole other unconscious plane of existence that we're all sort of co-creating, I guess is a good way to put it, that you can astrally project to and visit. In my times that I've gone, I was brought into first, like, so I'll speak about the last time. My body went into the state of vibration. I kind of relaxed my mind and cleared my thoughts and just leaned into it. And boom, I was laying on my back and I came out of my body. I'm still elevated, levitating, and I started to go down through myself and through the floor. And I remember getting worried, I guess because I wanted to go up, not down. I still have the whole Christian heaven hell thing going on in my head a lot of times, but I just relaxed and I went down through the floor and entered into it was almost like a flea market, like this vast flea market area of nothing but clocks and mirrors, just covered from floor to ceiling with clocks and mirrors. Um, and then I kind of drifted through that and went into this other kind of woodsy area where I was just kind of
Sorry, to go back to clocks and mirrors. Were the mirrors facing each other? Were mirrors facing each other at many
no,
times
they
or
were
no?
all hanging on the wall from the floor to the ceiling, all the way up to the wall, just kind of hanging there.
Okay, but if you're looking at one, was there mirrors on the other wall as well? Like as in that type of facing each other?
Yes, but there was no reflection of one within the other.
Okay, okay. It's just many times that this is brought about or thought about to be portals. That when a mirror
Oh,
when you put a mirror from side to side kind of thing, you create like an endless doorway and a portal.
I did not know that. Wow.
Okay, but sorry. So then you went to a different location. You said.
Yeah, so then I went to some other, it was almost like a wooded area, and that was when there was a spider that was there, and a spider web, and I remember I went to kind of push the spider web away, and the web got caught on my arm, and then the spider was on my arm, and then right then and there I felt fear and was kicked right back into my body. So that was my last experience with that. So I say all this to say that you come to the realization, because for me, up until that point, outer body experiences and astral projection and it was the stuff of sci-fi movies and horror movies, really. We make horror movies out of this stuff. And so for me to experience something like that it was an eye opener. I mean, it's very eye opening. You say, "Oh my gosh, there is some sort of other co-created thought form reality going on here that we all can kind of cohabitate." And so I mean, those are just my personal experiences with this thing that have brought me past the government surveillance. It's to the point with me now where even if I was presented with let's say a government official came and knocked on my door and said, "Yeah, we're running a V2K thing." I tell them to F off. Like, I don't even give a shit about you. Like, like, are you aware of what else is going on out in this universe, dude? Like, come on, stop it. Get out of here. Get off my steps. Like, I just don't care. I don't really get, like, once you experience these heightened states of spirituality that this thing brings about, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me anymore if there's like, they can all go play in traffic for all I give a shit. So it's like I have my own spiritual walk and my own family and my own community that I run and my own enlightenment and awakening process that, like, none of this shit even matters anymore. And who's to say that that's not the point? That's not the point of all of this, is to serve as a sort of catalyst of transformation and awakening. Albeit a very rude awakening, but for a lot of us, myself included, I needed that rude awakening. I was going through a very tumultuous time. My life was one of, back and forth and a lot of hardship and suffering and, and a lot of breaking of old patterns. And what this thing does is it almost presents cancer to an individual so that they can get over the common cold, is a good way to put it. So I was stuck in these loops, these recidivistic patterns of drug abuse and abusive relationships, and I couldn't get out of it. And then all of a sudden, here comes this thing, and it's like, holy shit, what is this? And now I got to fight this thing. And while I'm fighting this thing over here, these are small. My addiction and my, these are minute little things now. And now that I've conquered this thing and I've gotten through it, it seems so small what I once struggled with. See what I'm saying? So there's like this
So
pretentious
it really
display of
gave you this
cancer.
perspective, like this different perspective on everything by like you said, showing you the cancer to get over the common cold. I like that analogy.
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
it kind of sounds like it's that this is, and it's your choosing in a way isolating. Like it's very isolating, but but you yourself have created a community for this, where people can come together, but it feels like it can be very isolating, kind of like this manipulation. You just isolate yourself because no one understands.
right. Yeah, nobody understands. Nobody will believe you. If you go to the hospital, they're going to diagnose you as having schizophrenia and put you on medication, and that may or may not work. So, and I would say that the isolation, and again, I'll speak, personally for me, the the isolation for me was to not have outside influence to get to my authenticity, right? So, I told you a lot about my background. I struggled a lot with my Christian upbringing, and I had a lot of dualistic thinking, meaning, good versus evil. And that was me. I was always stuck in this pattern of sin, guilt, forgiveness, sin, guilt, for rinse, lather, repeat was the story of my life. I'd sin, I'd feel terrible for what I'd go and I'd pray,
Seems like the
I'd
life
feel a
of
little bit better.
for me. It seems like the life of a Catholic. That's that's a
Yeah,
Catholic lifestyle.
yeah,
That's
and then
exactly it as well. Yes.
yeah, and then I'd go and I'd do it all over again, and then like I said, I got stuck in this loop, this loop of just this cycle of doing the same thing over and over again, and not really taking the time to myself to get to know myself. Right. So what I promote in my community is a a process of self awareness, right? Self reflection, self awareness, and then self acceptance. And then learning, once you can understand yourself and accept yourself fully as you are without other people telling you who you are, because we live in a society where it's like, are you happy or do you want to be seen as being happy? There's a big difference between those two things. Right? Are you happy or do you just want everybody else to see you as happy? This is the Facebook society that we've created out there where our self-image is reflected by our upvotes and reflected by our views and our subscribers and our karma, our Reddit karma and so it's getting through all that. Not giving a shit what anybody else thinks or what anybody else says about you or what anybody else thinks you should be, but who are you as an individual within a community, within a collective, right? Because I look at it like this. Every single one of us are like keys on a keyboard, right? We're all just trying to get in tune. But some people want to mimic somebody else's key, right? Because they like the way that one sounds. So they say, I'll mimic that key. Well, that's not, if you do that, well, now the keyboard can't play it can't play a melody within its entirety because not everybody's in tune, right? So it's becoming an individual, right? But becoming an individual requires incorporating your shadow. And this is kind of Jungian theory,
Yes,
and it's
I
very
I
true.
could not agree more with this. So many people
Yeah,
refuse to look within, and I have that trouble as well, looking within and seeing my shadow and coming to terms and grips with it, and like dealing with it.
yeah, yeah. So, and if I can kind of explain what it means to integrate your shadow, because I get a lot of people that
Please.
ask me, like, what does that mean to do shadow work? I want to do shadow work. Like, please, like, I'm willing to face it. So, I'll tell you a quick story about myself. When I was in, I want to say first or second grade, right? I remember seeing something that had to do with like vampires and werewolves, and it scared me. As a child, I developed a fear of werewolves. So, that week on the recess yard, I began playing werewolf, and I bit a girl so hard I broke her skin, and it sent her crying to the nurse's office. My mother was called in. There was this big, parent teacher conference meeting about me biting girls on the schoolyard and everything. And but that was me not incorporating my shadow appropriately. Now, obviously, I'm talking about me in first grade, and nobody's required to do shadow work in first grade, but it's an analogy, it's a parable. I became that which I feared, right? Instead of facing the werewolf. Why am I afraid of werewolves? What is it about werewolves that scares me? What where do werewolves come from? Is it myth? Is it real? Is it legend, right? So instead, I just personified a werewolf and I started biting people, and then I created suffering in my life and that girl's life and my parents' life and the nurse's life. And this is, you know, this is what shadow work is learning how to incorporate your shadow within the positive attributes of you to create a better whole, to create a stronger, more whole version of you, that can go out into the world and not be so afraid and not be so paranoid about everything and thinking everything's out to get you. And that requires a lot of self introspection and a lot of self and a lot of trauma reflection. You have to look at things in your life. Like I had to go back into my childhood and I had to go back into my teens and like, what was it that was causing this abuse? I had an alcoholic, abusive father who passed away a few years ago, and I was raised by his stepfather. And he left when I was like 5 and didn't come back in the picture until I was 21. And then I was raised like very with the dualistic thinking of being in the Baptist church and trying to get over some of that stuff that I had disagreements with. And you come to find out it's okay to disagree. Like for me to like the only reason I was really still invested in Christianity was because it was what was expected of me. Right. And I didn't know any better. I just wanted my parents to like me and accept me and be proud of me, and the whole time I'm suffocating, and then I'm drinking because of it, because I don't want to, because I don't like myself, and then I'm running and I'm to hiding and so all these things that we have to be willing to face about ourselves, like, and the things that we don't like in other people, because if there's something within you that I hate, right? Well, first of all, I have to be willing to admit that I have hate within me that I wish to project to you. Like if I look at you right now, right, and I say, I hate your fucking guts, right? It's a strong statement. I hate your fucking guts, right? So, first of all, you have to be willing to accept that, right? Like, well, why does he hate me? What is it about this guy that he hates my guts so much? You know, but really, if you look at that statement, I hate, what I'm saying is that I have hatred within me that I wish to project onto you. Do you accept this hatred that I'm offering? Because now we're going to reciprocate hatred and it's on, right? But as it stands, when I say a statement like that, like I hate you don't have to accept that. You just say, "Oh, all right, that's great. So, but that, even from your perspective, you being able to say, and not resonate with that, that requires shadow work on your end. And that requires you being able to look at me and saying that person has hate within them that I'm not required to accept right now. That's their problem, not mine. I'm not responsible for the for the person, for the person of me that exists in your mind. Because that, and come kind of coming into that, that awareness within yourself. I'm not responsible for the version of me that exists in your mind, because people can just make up whatever the hell they want about you, right? I can come on here and be as open and as honest and be as forthcoming and give the most restorative advice that I can possibly give. And I guarantee you those comments are still going to say this guy is a liar and he's a perp and he's a narc and blah, blah, blah. That's the world that we live in. Now it's up to me. Have I done the shadow work within me appropriately to just whatever, right? Because if I haven't accepted me to the fullest, I'm going to resonate with that, and now I'm going to be put in a bad mood. But since I've done the shadow work and I've worked with going through this process, it doesn't matter to me. That problem is on them. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that I'm not, that's actually kind of a terrible thing to say, but it's true. It's true. If somebody wants to call me a liar and a perp and a scumbag and all this stuff, and he's a gang stalker, that's fine. That's on you. You know what I mean? That's your something that you're going to have to come out of. I have an open community for you to come and get involved in. When I'll be willing to work with you one on one, get involved in the Discord. I'll talk to you on the phone if you want me to. Like, introduce you to my family. Like I'll give you my Facebook. Like it doesn't matter. I'm that open about all this thing. And that's one of the main reasons in the very beginning that I felt it absolutely necessary to show my face, show my family's face, be on Facebook, be open, be aware, do these podcasts, right? Is to show people come out of that isolation. You don't have to be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of, right? Incorporate the shadow. And if you really look at our government, what does our government have? They have a shadow government,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
They're doing all these secret things. They do all these secret things behind the scenes, and they're not incorporating it properly. And now we're having chaos within society itself. We have all these technologies that are being hidden from us. We have like all these propulsion systems and like ways that can really transform society. And people know this, and it's creating confusion, it's creating chaos because the government itself is not willing to integrate its own shadow within within the rest of the country. And that is a great example of poor shadow integration right there, and the chaos that is caused because of it.
I I I could not agree more. I think that's a great way to put it. You know, it's this, and it's for the sense of control as well. It's kind of like we're trying to control something, but in the end, we're
Right.
forgetting. We're trying to control what's outside when we need to be controlling what's inside. And
Exactly.
well, I don't want to say controlling, but working with and working through what we have on the inside there.
Yeah, and I think that's going to have to be done at a individual level first, and then expressed outwardly, because I can't help others. I can't help my family. I can't help my neighbors. I can't be a good member of society if I'm wrong inside first. I'm going to give you a presentation of a helper, but I'm not actually going to be helping because I'm not offering anything of value because I don't value myself first. So there's that whole thing. So if this has to happen at an individual level first, and then all that has to be expressed outwardly into our community and into the collective unconsciousness as well.
I, I feel that this interview is almost personally for me right at this point in time. Like these are messages that I need to hear, and I'm like, yeah, we can't be that helper and pretend to be that helper if we're not really dealing with it ourselves. Like portray that person, and it's like if we're not working through our own issues. And I'm like, oh my god, I needed to hear that. Wow. And so I had a list of other questions, but as this conversation is progressing, and as I'm learning, I'm like, they don't really apply. These questions don't really apply anymore because I was talking more of like, who do you believe is really behind this kind of thing? Is it governments, private contractors? But I'm going to throw that out and throw the government out because I don't think that's it. I think like this is almost a world that we're not seeing that we've tapped into that's either trying to that is in some ways manipulating us, but you're using that type of, I don't want to say manipulate, you're like this interfering maybe in a way, or something that, but this interference, you're using it in a positive way. You're like, okay, I'm not getting stuck at this level where I'm only thinking it's this and I'm like blaming everybody else. I'm kind of using those, you are using these lessons and these integrations to step up, to become to level up more or less, if we're talking like at a
And
video game
to
sort of thing.
yeah, and to move past it and to kind of get out of the thinking of pretentiousness, meaning forecasting bad events. That's what it means to be portentous. Um, because our expectations have a lot to do with this. So like, and I'll give you a good example. So while I was going through this, every night before I would go to bed, I would start hearing music playing. Music was a big part of my experience. Constantly just playing music over and over and over and over again. And it would be a lot of times it would be whatever I had most recently listened to. It would just get stuck on repeat, and it would always be 5 to 10 second clips of the chorus, like mantras playing over and over and over again in my head. And every night before I would go to bed, as soon as I would lay down, children's nursery rhymes would start playing because I have a daughter at home, and whatever I was listening to during the day on like Miss Rachel or something like that, it would start playing, and I was like obnoxious, right? And then I got into this fear pattern of like expecting that to happen, and my expectation would always make it manifest every single time. And then I stopped expecting that. I stopped. It's almost like, and a lot of times it happens just because you get acclimated to it and you forget that it's supposed to happen, and then it doesn't happen. You know, or, or a lot of times you're mindful of it. I'm not going to be pretentious. I'm not going to be, But even that is almost like it's a paradoxical thing because the moment that you go to think about something, you've already thought about it. So it's like, so that doesn't work a lot of times. So yeah, yeah. So then that wears off, and now it doesn't. Now it doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, so that, getting out of the pattern of negative thinking or forecasting bad things coming into your future, like, oh, this is definitely going to happen next because it probably will. So that what you're doing is like we talked about in the beginning, all of these probabilities that we're forecasting in our head at a lower conscious level, we're bringing them up. We're bringing them up and then we're manifesting them and then we're hearing them and then we're responding to them with our anxieties. The greatest control that this thing has over you is your emotional response to its provocations.
Okay.
That's something that
Interesting.
everybody needs to get in their head. Like that is its biggest power right there is your emotional response to its provocations. Because if it can make you respond, it'll keep doing that very thing that'll make you respond until you no longer have an emotional response to it. Like that's how this whole thing always works. It will always exploit your weaknesses beyond measure until you no longer have an emotional attachment to it. And then it'll move on to the next thing and then next thing and next thing. So yeah, yeah. Oh, you froze up again.
Absolutely crazy. And I was saying, it's recording right now, so it's very ironic. All these technical glitches and difficulties that we're having for this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I do have. Yeah, so it's just crazy. One thing I wanted to touch on before we go. I only have 10 minutes, but I would
Okay.
love to hear your thoughts on differentiating this between schizophrenia. Because I think they are so closely similar. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you help me out with that? Yeah, no problem, no problem.
Okay. And I struggled with this myself because when it first started happening, I I thought surely I must be experiencing schizophrenia, and the voices would confirm this. They say you have schizophrenia, just to really ramp up the fear.
Okay,
Um, so as somebody that does not identify as schizophrenic, I can only really speak from what I have experienced between my community and the schizophrenia community, their descriptions against our descriptions. And I'll say this, there are a lot of people in my community that identify as having schizophrenia. Okay. And the manner in which the voices operate are very similar. This sort of repetitive negative self image sort of thing, always brutalizing the person, the tactile sensations, all of these signs and symptoms for schizophrenia and paranoid schizophrenia are in alignment. Now, I did think for the longest time that one of the defining things between the targeted individual community and the schizophrenia community was the high pitched ringing that we hear all the time. So it's not tinnitus. It's like a tuning fork or like glass scraping on glass. It's like this very high pitched, just and it just goes. And sometimes, especially in the beginning when I was going through this, I would wake up and it felt like my skull was being pushed outward and this thing would be penetrating in there around my brain. And so one day I got curious and I put a post on the schizophrenia community on Reddit and I said, "Does anybody else experience this high pitched ringing?" And boom, yeah, I mean the response was overwhelming. So even that symptom, which I thought was like a tech, because when you hear a high pitched ringing, you think frequency, you think technology. I'm thinking surely this has to be some technological thing. And turns out it's very prevalent within the schizophrenia community as well, and it's also very prevalent within the experiencers community. A lot of those people that are going through that, and they deal with the same signs and symptoms. They also hear this high pitch ringing. People that have had UFO encounters hear this high pitch ringing. Whitley Strieber complained of hearing a high pitch ringing noise after his UFO abduction. So, um,
and
yeah,
and and,
yeah,
and I
that
know you said it's not tendinitis, but could it not be somewhat connected? 'Cause tendinitis is like crystals, allegedly crystals growing inside your hearing canals, I believe, or something along that line.
that's what they're saying tinnitus is. I thought it was the loss of hearing, like when your ear drums or your inner ear begins to not be able to pick up on certain frequencies. It's that frequency dying out. That's what I was raised with. But this, I've experienced tinnitus, and that's not what this is. This is not
Okay,
tinnitus.
okay, because
We just, yeah,
I'm wondering though, if that is some sort of way connected though, like crystals growing in your ears or your eardrums, like some crystalline kind of. Is it possibly and I'm that's where I live. I live in the
yeah,
conspiracy
yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
things. Maybe there's some sort of connection there that needs to be looked in a little further. Of like you literally are tuning in to something else that is otherworldly with a crystal hearing piece. I don't know, but that's me being far fetched. But yeah,
Yeah. So it's interesting about that high pitch ringing. Um, we did a podcast with Dr. Jerry Marzinski, who dealt strictly with schizophrenic patients throughout the 80s and 90s, and I would say early 2000s. And I asked him during the interview, I said, "Did your patients," and he's treated hundreds of schizophrenic patients over the years. I said, "Have your patients ever complained of a high pitched ringing noise?" And he said, "No, not one. Not one time did he ever hear that." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "But I hear a high pitched ringing noise right now." But he's elderly, so he might be actually hearing tinnitus. I'm not sure. But about 2.5 months ago, I started calling bullshit on the high pitched ringing. I said, "Oh, this is bullshit. Like everything that is going on with this thing is an orchestration. It's like a hall of 1,000 mirrors. Um, that jesters are holding the mirrors up behind the mirror, and you're meant to see through the mirror and see the clown behind the mirror wearing a bunch of makeup holding up the mirror." So I started calling bullshit on the high pitch ringing and saying that that was just some sort of a red herring to keep people stuck in this thing, thinking it was technology. It went away. It went away. The high the high pitch ringing went away. It stayed away, I want to say, for about a month. I now keep in mind I had it straight for almost 2 years. Just meh, went away for a month after I called bullshit on it. Came back very lightly, went away again. And then I'd say probably within the past 2 weeks, it's been coming in spurts very lightly, but then it just goes away again. Yeah, bizarre, man. I'm telling you, like a lot of this, if not all of this, is meant for you to overcome. Like everything, it's like that
these hurdles.
that that
Hmm.
well, it's like that Zen saying, the obstacle is the path, right? So it's everything that you see is meant for you to overcome. And when you can overcome these things, you overcome yourself, and then you go on to the next obstacle, and then on the other end comes this much better, wholer version of you that's more in tune, has a stronger conviction in your spiritual beliefs, has more empathy for other people around you, is more present in the present moment, has and that's, yeah.
Wow. I'm just going to see if I have any other questions because I do have a class I got to jump to here in about five
Okay.
minutes. But um, like so okay, so just we'll end it off on this because I think this is a good way. What can someone do if they suspect that they are a TI, a targeted individual? What do you suggest they do?
Don't respond. Okay, that's number one. Don't respond. Now, and again, we're going to go back to the beginning here. If you're dealing with some sort of like, you know harassment, and it's very, it can be difficult to differentiate between stalking and harassment. Um, but if what you're dealing with is, the signs and symptoms of being gang stalked or a targeted individual, the best thing that you can do is not give it your attention. Really, don't give it the attention that it's wanting, right? Because it feeds off of that attention. It feeds off of the fear, it feeds off of the negative emotions, and it'll exploit that until it kind of blows it out of proportion, and then you wind up looking stupid or silly, or in jail or arrested or something. Um, Reach out. I would say first reach out, come into the community, read the testimonies, read the signs and symptoms. Like everybody gets a welcome message when they first join the community. That is a whole list of what is a targeted individual, and how we go about our community handling it. Get involved, begin talking with us, and it really will lessen the longevity of the process the sooner that you can kind of move through these delusional thinking scenarios. Yeah, that's really the best thing I mean, really, that is the best thing is don't respond, and reach out.
Do you feel that you are resented for being sometimes so forward and so blunt, saying these kinds of things, where some people just want to focus on it? Do you feel that some people attack you for your point of view, or your like this is what we need to do, and they'd rather not, they'd rather sit in this denial or this isolation rather than and attack you for it than rather than deal with it?
No, no, not at all. Kind of like what we said in the beginning. Everybody's going to understand this from their own level of
True.
experience.
Yeah.
Even somebody that's never heard of this phenomenon, listening to it, they're only going to understand it from their own level of experience, and they're going to try to associate it within their brain because that's what the brain does. It pattern matches and makes associations. They're going to associate it with what they know best, and a lot of people just, um, it hasn't unraveled for them in certain ways yet.
They
And I
haven't hit
guess
that
what I'm
point
in the
yet.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, what I'm in the business of doing is helping that unravel a little bit more and pushing people further past the delusional states of fear and paranoia and thinking everybody's out to harm you and kill you, and get back into productive, healthy living and a spirit, better spiritual walk.
Awesome, Kevin. Thank you so much for your time. And one last time, where can everybody find you?
Positive TI on Reddit, or you can go on YouTube and just put in my name, Kevin, or targeted individual, or we have a power awareness YouTube, or you can join our Discord. I'll make sure I give you the link. You can put it on with the video that you post on YouTube. You can join us there and jump in on conversation and ask questions. I do always recommend, especially in the beginning, listening twice as much as speaking, or just asking questions. Don't come in and just assume you have all the answers, because this thing is like, it plays with a person's grandeur. It's like the voices are telling you that's correct. Oh, you're like, you're brilliant. You're going to set the world on fire. Like, I get people coming in there and they're like, I'm God's messenger and he has sent me here to heal everybody, and this is what he's told me to relay to you. And everybody's like, all right, come on, man. Like, we've all been there. There's like this whole messiah complex that everybody kind of has to get through as well. It'll have you thinking that you're out to save all of humanity. And Ram Dass tells a very funny story about this. I don't know if you ever listened to Ram Dass or not, but he tells a story. He Ram Dass was like a very kind of like a spiritual guru, and but he had a brother who struggled with severe mental illness, and he said his brother was always in and out of mental institutions, and he would go in and visit his brother. And his brother would get mad at him all the time, because he'd be like, "Look, man, you're out here, you're wearing a beard and you got a dress on, and everybody loves you." He's like, "But I'm in here, and he's like, "Well, that's because when you're out there, you're stealing cars because you think you're Jesus and people owe you them cars. From my perspective, I think we're both Jesus and I'm going to love you the same as everybody else. Like, do you see the difference?" So he said his brother would sit across from the psychiatrist, and his brother would think he was Jesus and the psychiatrist would think she was a psychiatrist, and both of them thought that they were insane. So it's that sort of thinking that we kind of need to move past, these
Yeah.
delusions of grandeur, thinking that we're a singular messiah, and instead we're all part of a collective consciousness. So we all need to kind of work together here to move past these states of instinctual fear residue, as I like to refer to it as. Yeah.
Aw Awesome. Kevin, thank you so much.
All right, buddy. Thanks for having me on. All right, take care.
Well, everyone, that was a interesting conversation with Kevin, and quite ironic the amount of technical difficulties we faced in this due to my power going out. Just cut it. It just cut out through the whole block, the whole area, and so then I decided to, I was going to send Kevin a an invite and use my cell phone as a mobile hotspot. And as I did, my computer just completely shut down, and it was extremely strange. So then I was able to get it all back up and running on my mobile hotspot. We had the interview, and then again, it just cut out. I don't know. Government involvement? I don't think so. Some sort of involvement of unexplainable measures? I do. I think something happened, and this conversation, maybe maybe this conversation wasn't supposed to happen, but we made it happen, and we should be looking at the bigger picture as to why these technical difficulties are happening. It I we should work past this all and try to move forward from it. So I I find it really fascinating, though. And I really want to give Kevin a shout out again. You know, if you are still listening and watching, go check out his Discord. Go check out his Reddit, Positive Ti. Check out his YouTubes. All the links will be down below. And thank you, Kevin, for pulling back this veil on this world that most people can't see and just maybe don't want to, or most people don't even know about. So there are people who do believe that this is covert tech, psychological warfare, but perhaps a better understanding is not targeted individual, but spiritual targeting, or something, maybe, or something that defies these categories. One thing is clear is the people living in this reality aren't crazy. They're being hunted in the shadows of modern society. So, as always, the truth is just hidden, isn't just hidden, it's intentionally obscured. And maybe that's the most dangerous weapon of all. So until next time, keep your curiosity wandering, your light lit, and always find your way home.
Beneath the stars where shadows grow, the Nephilim's echoes whisper low. Bigfoot roams through the forest deep, and Dogman prowls where the brave won't sleep. Across lost history we wonder why, seeking the truth that time tried to hide. Keep your curiosities wandering and the light lit. Through the darkness, don't ever quit. In the codex, the mysteries come, and always find your way back home. UFOs streak through the velvet skies. Aliens watch with unblinking eyes. The paranormal hums where silence breaks. In the void of secrets, a lantern wakes. Through hidden realms and stories untold, the cold gas flame is a light to hold. Keep your curiosities wandering and the light lit. Through the darkness, don't ever quit. In the codex, the mysteries come, and always find your way back home. Velvet skies, aliens watch with unblinking eyes. The paranormal hums where silence breaks. In the void of secrets, a lantern wakes. Through hidden realms and stories untold, the cold gas flame is a light to hold. Keep your curiosities wandering and the light lit. Through the darkness, don't ever quit. In the codex, the mysteries come, and always find your way back home. Legends rise from the earth's deep core, a lost legacy we can't ignore. With every step, the veil grows thin, revealing worlds where the strange begins. Keep your curiosities wandering and the light lit. Through the darkness, don't ever quit. In the codex, the mysteries come, and all